Oil prices topped $71 a barrel this morning. Experts are pointing to weak demand and a falling dollar. Oil is down about 13%, though, since reaching a high of $83 a barrel earlier in October. This week's EIA report said U.S. consumption of petroleum products fell to its lowest level since early July. Natural gas inventories report is due out a bit later this morning. Right now, we have numbers showing oil at $71.18 a barrel, up 51 cents. There's natural gas, $4.92, up 2 cents per thousand cubic feet. With us now to talk a little bit more about gas and oil, a familiar face here, Clean Skies News, Elliott Gue from the Energy Letter and the Energy Strategist. Good morning, Elliott.
Good morning.
So we have prices for natural gas near $5 now per thousand cubic feet. What do you see the inventory report doing?
We're looking for a drawdown, about 47 billion cubic feet.
Related?
Yes, absolutely. This will be the first drawdown of this particular season, and it's totally related to the weather. I mean, you've seen the news about the snowstorm in the Midwest. Right. You know, obviously the main gas-consuming parts of the country are seeing their real first bout of cold winter weather.
So what is this doing for the supply capacity situation? Last time you were here, we were talking a lot about the industry being right at capacity for storage.
Right. You know, and there's really no hard number as to what that capacity is. I mean, we kind of bumped up against that level. You did see a lot of pipelines sort of limiting how much gas companies could feed into the pipeline because it was nearing capacity. And we probably got pretty much as close as you're going to get to full storage. Now we're going to start to see a normal seasonal drawdown in inventories. And it'll be interesting to watch how the actual gas production proceeds in the U.S. The most recent report we got was at the end of November, showing a 2.2% month-over-month reduction in U.S. natural gas production from the lower 48 states. If that continues, you could see inventories really tighten up by, say, next summer, and that could support gas prices.
Give us a global view here. We have Sanford C. Bernstein out with a report on pricing. He says that global gas prices from 2011 to 2015, very bullish and bullish on the medium term, but globally prices are not going to recover dramatically next year. Talking about you know, demand growth really being countered by all the new supplies. Do you see that as a result of the new domestic unconventional supplies here as well as abroad?
Well, I mean, in the U.S., I mean, with natural gas, unlike oil, it is definitely a regional market. And in the U.S., you know, it depends upon what happens with shale production. In other words, how much we produce from our domestic shale plays, and how much and how long it takes for the decline in the rig count we've seen over the last year to really bite and start to bring down production. Globally, it has to do with LNG projects that are due to come on stream over the next 18 months or so, the liquefied natural gas. There are a number, places like the Middle East, also Australia, there are a number of new projects there. A lot of those supplies are being locked down under long-term deals. So a lot of Asian countries, China, Japan, for example, are trying to lock down that supply because they know that ultimately they're going to need that gas. But in the near term, one of the fears out there is that this new LNG supply is going to come on stream. In other words, it's going to be produced, but there's going to be nowhere to put it because, you know, Europe is going to have too much gas. The United States already has too much gas, but we also have a lot of storage capacity. So there is a fear that some of that LNG is going to find its way into the U.S. market probably next summer.
So we are getting back our storage capacity?
Well, you know, we're going to get it back naturally over the next 6 or 8 months because you're going to start to see that drawdown in inventories. And even though our capacity reached that full level this year, we also have a lot more storage capacity relative to our demand than almost any other country in the world. The reason for that is that most natural gas storage is actually depleted natural gas fields that you're essentially pumping gas into. Most other countries don't have that luxury. You know, even a lot of other gas-producing countries, like the United Kingdom, for example, most of their fields are offshore, so they're not, you know, readily available storage facilities of the scale that we have in the United States. So one of the fears that you hear a lot about over the next 18 months is that a lot of that LNG that's being produced in places like Africa, the Middle East, and Australia is going to end up by default coming here because we have more storage capacity to keep it than almost any other country. That's not going to be
good for prices.
That would not be good for prices. Now, the offset to that is, you know, a lot of things can change. One is that, you know, if European demand for natural gas rebounds more quickly than expected, you know, if Europe sees a colder winter than expected, then, you know, natural gas prices in Europe right now are higher than they are in the U.S. So that would tend to attract flows of LNG. The other place that's obviously, you know, on top of everybody's mind is China and other developing countries in places like Asia. Their demand for natural gas is growing very, very rapidly. No, they do not have the kind of storage capacity that we do. They kind of use LNG as a sort of storage capacity in its own right, in the sense that they don't have the domestic onshore storage. So they're kind of using LNG as a way of storing natural gas.
Okay. A different item here. We have IEA's Fatih Birol talking this week about natural gas consumers, the consuming companies, trying to break the price link between piped natural gas and crude oil. What do you see happening there?
Well, in the U.S., natural gas prices and oil prices have kind of broken apart in the sense that, traditionally there was a ratio a lot of people looked at, the ratio between the price of oil over the price of natural gas. Now, over the last 6 or 8 months, that's become record highs. In other words, oil is extremely expensive relative to natural gas. In Europe, a lot of contracts are priced. In other words, a lot of the supply contracts are priced such that natural gas prices are based upon oil prices, which for many, many years made a lot of sense because there was quite a close relationship there. Now it's not making so much sense because there's a lot of natural gas supply. So the natural gas market looks a lot less tight than the oil market. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see some of that. Obviously, that would be bad news for countries like Russia that are major suppliers into the European market and are getting very high prices for their natural gas because it's based upon oil prices. Okay.
There's going to be some talk in Copenhagen later this week about the global shale picture. Do you see or don't you see shale being developed along the lines that we've seen here over at least the next decade or so in other shale plays around the world, or do you see conventional supplies and LNG really keeping that on hold for a long time?
Well, there are a number of swing factors there. One is that if there's a lot of LNG supply, then the world price of natural gas may not be high enough to incentivize companies to go out and do major investment in shale. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to try. You're already seeing some of that. You're already seeing U.S. companies go into places like China and in Europe and start to drill some of these horizontal wells and fracturing those wells, just as we do here, to try to produce shale gas or other tight gas, unconventional supplies of natural gas. And you're going to see that continue. The problem you see in a lot of those countries is a lack of domestic infrastructure. It's no mistake that the Haynesville Shale, which is in Louisiana, the Barnett Shale, which is in Texas, are really the core of the U.S. Petroleum industry. Most of the capacity to do things like fracture, drill horizontally is located there. I mean, we have that capacity domestically. A lot of other countries don't have that large domestic capacity. Therefore, those are really the two things to watch. One is, does the supply of LNG keep natural gas prices low enough that it doesn't incentivize a lot of drilling outside the United States? Two, do these countries have enough capacity domestically to really make it worthwhile? And how long does that take to ramp up? And really what you're hearing from a lot of the services companies is it's going to take a lot longer than people seem to expect. Right. It's not a simple matter of just because there's shale there, let's go out and drill it. It's a matter of getting the type of equipment and know-how in place in those countries.
So too many questions to be sure how soon that might happen.
Absolutely.
Okay, Elliott Gue, energy strategist, thank you.
Thank you.